Yeah, well, he's a great, better writer than speaker.
You guys talking about not Zola Levitt? You guys talking about
Arnold.
Rosenbach. Oh yeah, because you've met him as well.
Yeah, I haven't met him. We just got a lot of material because Jacob was quite connected.
Right.
Oh, it was Prosh, Jacob Prosh, right?
Yeah.
Have you had any dealings with him?
I met him. I met him maybe once.
That's the guy I was mentioning, was the pharmacist in New York City before he got saved.
But Arnold, he studied a lot of Arnold stuff.
Yeah. And then we got a network of guys in South Africa who were all connected with Jacob, Arnold.
Oh yeah.
That's where we got a little bit of exposure to that ministry and the teachings.
Yeah, it's a good teaching ministry.
Yeah, very.
Yeah, so in the 80s, I guess I got saved in the late 80s, and I used to go up to his camp. And I even stayed at his house. He stayed at my house.
Oh, wonderful.
I went to Israel with him, but we were friendly. I kind of lost touch the last 10 years, but even my congregation in New Jersey, where half of them used to go up to this Camp Shoshana.
Okay.
So
Was it named after a daughter of his or something?
No, Shoshana. It's so Rose. There was a woman, Rose, who helped lead him to faith.
This is Street Evangelism 101. Alan's doing his stuff.
There was this guy, what was his name? Burl Haney, and Arnold was. There was a woman, Rose. I forget her last name, but maybe Rose Price. So anyway, Arnold, I guess, came to faith at 13 years old. But it's not right around that. He comes from a line of rabbis.
Yes, that's right.
Orthodox rabbis in Russia. And that's what the camp Rose Shoshana is. Shoshana is Hebrew for Rose.
So you've never heard of a guy called Les Crickman? He was with us in SA.
What's his name again?
Leslie Crickman. He did a lot of studying under Arnold, and he's a good Bible teacher. Yeah. But he's just left SA back to the UK where he came from.
Yeah. Then there was so there's another guy, David L. Cooper.
Okay.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, I shared some stuff with him. So he wrote in the 40s, and he had a vision of writing to 144,000, and he wrote 7 books for Israel.
Okay.
And his vision was writing to the 144,000.
That are coming in the book of Revelation.
Right, right. The virgins, Jewish people, 12,000.
Yeah.
Right.
So he was a very good teacher. He studied 5-6 hours a day.
Sure.
And he wrote the end times are right at the foot, at the footsteps. So as soon as I got saved, I ran into, I met Arnold in the camp, and I went through every single of his manuscripts.
I found what's happened with a lot of the guys that have gone, and they've made a huge effort in terms of studying and understanding things, but sadly a lot of them kind of move into this what do they call it, where they just expose everything,
sort of apologetics.
They move into that kind of thing, and that becomes their focus. Apologetics. It's a diversion because we're called to preach Christ. So
that's a
I'll
good
go
point.
and study
That's a good
a bit
point.
of apologetics.
That's
I'll
a good
study
point.
creation. I'll study a bit of everything because you need that to be able to interact with people. But if we're not preaching Christ, and every one of these friends of mine who have obsessed themselves with something have eventually gone into error themselves.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Knowledge
puffs up.
Exactly what happens.
The enemy's going to use. Look at Voice of the Martyrs. I knew Wurmbrand. I went to. I heard him preach. Four or 5 times, and read his books when I was younger, and the ministry fell apart
because they got so popular, selling books and videos.
The enemy, the enemy is looking to devour, right? And if you're not fed, and you don't have the spirit of discernment, not in the Word, and you don't hold on to anything too tight, everybody's prone.
That's exactly what happens.
Everybody's prone.
Exactly.
Even you and I.
Well, of course we are. And that's why I think some of the critical things are we've got to preach the full counsel. Right. You can't elevate one truth above another. Because then that one truth could lead you into error. And that's why fellowship and a body of believers and accountability is also critical.
Right. I agree with that.
Because, a friend of mine in Joburg, he built his whole ministry around people who had got disillusioned with the charismatic movement. Right. And all their ministry was always about slamming the crazy stuff. Right. It was like, guys, at some
Yeah,
point
at
you
some
got
point you got to move past
Yeah,
that
you need the
and
truth.
get
You don't
us.
need to beat up the people that are
and they
in
never
error.
did.
No,
And then the
it's
next
true.
thing, this guy falls into adultery.
Right.
Oh, see,
It's like, you
yeah,
gotta be kidding me.
yeah, we become legalistic in any area. Yeah,
100%.
No, I agree.
Well, you gotta go to a hard sucker.
And all theology or all religious groups, if you're walking with the Lord, they all converge. They
Yeah.
should. You know? Good morning. They all should converge to truth, right?
Yeah,
'Cause,
exactly.
You know, if God wants to give you the gift of this, He'll give you the gift of this.
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah.
You know, you have the Spirit of God. He'll use you any way you take a step of faith
Exactly.
and boldness. You know. And whatever you hold on to tight,
Yeah.
whatever it is, you gotta be ready to let go.
yep.
So you're living down here in Miami now,
Yeah,
obviously.
I'm up the road. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
5-6 miles up the road.
Okay.
He jumps on his bike on Saturdays
Yeah,
and
right
tools
down
down here. It's like a 12-mile round trip.
Nah, yeah, it's not that.
Round trip.
So how
know.
did you guys meet?
Well, it's funny. The same way you and I met.
just
I was.
this.
He
Okay.
he rode by one
This is my
day.
stuff, you know?
Steve was out here, and he had seen me before. And I guess I had walked to the car to get something, and I heard him saying, "Where's that other guy?" And I was like, "Uh-oh, I'm in trouble now. This must be some undercover from City Hall that says I need a permit." And I figured it was something about getting a permit. And he was like, "What's all this stuff?" And I was, "Oh, it's the gospel of Jesus," and da da da. And then
No,
next
see
thing you know,
the
I find
see
out.
the Jewish stuff. And,
Yeah.
I come from a Jewish background.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
So,
You know.
I studied from a Jewish context. And,
Okay.
and most people, like, you know, if you don't have the Jewish context, you miss things. I was explaining, to Herbert about what does it mean to be born again. Nicodemus, how many times was he born again? Or or even what's the difference between the wife of Jehovah and the bride of Christ, and the relationship that God has with Israel, right? He marries her,
Exactly.
divorces her, punishes her, remarries her, right? So he goes through the covenants, and how are Gentiles saved? Through what covenant? It's the Jeremiah covenant. Right? I make a new covenant with the house of Israel. So how did Gentiles get part of that? Right?
Yeah.
Well, they're grafted.
Yeah.
They're grafted in, right? Romans 9, 10, 11. They're grafted in by faith, right? But the promises still exist to Israel. So when Jesus says that I came from some teachers that used to teach the Bible from the making of the faithful remnant. The making of the faithful remnant. What does that mean?
Making of the faith what?
Faithful remnant.
Okay.
So you study the book of Psalms like that, or even the whole scriptures from that. So what's Isaiah 53 start off with? Who would have believed our report?
Yeah.
What's the context of that? Who would have believed our report, right? The context of that is, Jesus said, you won't see me again until you say, Baruch haba b'Shem, blessed who comes in the name of the Lord. Who is he talking to? He's really talking to that faithful remnant, right? That's, in Petra studying and realizing, oh my God, he's ours. Jesus is our Messiah. Right? Who would have believed our report? He grew up, right? So the context of the making of the faithful remnant is the 1/3 of the Jewish people that survived the tribulation period, and they confess Jesus as
And
the
those are the
Messiah.
ones that in Zechariah, where he reveals himself to them. Where did you receive those marks?
Right.
I received them in the house of my friends. And then
Right.
suddenly they realize.
Right. And then, like Psalm 110, the first verse says, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make the enemy a footstool. What's that about? Well, the context of that is, the David's Lord, whoever that is, somebody high up, the Messiah, speaking to God and saying, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies. How do you have enemies? Well, your enemies from the first encounter, when you rejected your Messiah, you became enemies for the gospel. Give me a second, that's the boss call.
Yep.
Yeah, hello?
Such is marriage.
Nothing, we're just giving out tracts.
Well, why have you never been married, dude?
I'll tell you, I've been asked that question, and I think about it myself. In fact, my girlfriend in college, who I led to the Lord,
All right.
probably should have married her. And I'll be honest with you, she asked me to marry her like a couple of times, and I got some bad advice from the church. After I finished college, I was in law school, and then they were so gung ho, and they were like, "Man, the Lord's going to use you for such and such and so," but the Lord's telling me to be single. He wants you to be single-mindedly devoted to the Lord, and gave me that verse from Scripture. And I was I'd already been dating her throughout college. We had never had sexual relations. She was, awesome. She would have been a perfect wife. And I kind of bought into the God has a plan for you. They really had a plan for me because they were a growing church, and they were like, this guy. They were more into the sort of political activism. Like we're gonna get this guy to run for mayor of Washington D.C. He's at a world-class law school. We're gonna put our support behind him, and he's gonna be our guy, and we're gonna Christianize the whole world, starting with the nation's capital by making this guy mayor. So when the idea of like marrying your college sweetheart and moving off to New York or Chicago, where she was working at Arthur Anderson's when she graduated from Michigan, they kind of talked me into kind of breaking up with her. And I thought I was being super spiritual, and I did. So I broke up with her because I thought the Lord didn't tell me to do it. The Lord told the pastor and his right-hand man to tell me. And I learned a valuable lesson. Like, if the Lord is going to give you some life-changing information, you better have him give it directly. If you're born again and you're preaching the gospel, why wouldn't he tell me?
Confirmed by others, but God
at least God is merciful.
Well, I mean, so the point is, like a couple of years later, she her sisters were like, hey, she's kind of waiting around. Is there any chance? And I was so convinced that the Lord had told them to tell me. She was like, all right, well, she's this guy from her church. Now that she moved to Chicago, he proposed to her, and his dad's a big guy in the State Department. You better do something, and I didn't. And so that was probably who the Lord probably wanted me to get married to. And I dated like a couple of times after that was serious, and they weren't actually born again like she was. And one was a Roman Catholic lifelong who converted for me, and because she was so stunningly beautiful, you fall in love with appearances. And I'm basically marrying a Roman Catholic. So you end up in the long run after about a 4-year stint with a Christian Catholic girl whose family themselves had been mixed up, because they were Puerto Rican, into maybe like Santeria and some things like that, and all kinds of stuff I knew nothing about. It was a disaster, and the Lord was like, "There's no way I'm okaying that." And so since then, I never really. I always thought, I missed my train, and that's pretty much it. I guess I'm just, if something drops out of the sky, who knows,
Heaven is there.
There you go.
Do you know Jonathan King by any chance? He was from New Zealand. No? I'm not sure what kind of ministry he was in.
No, I never met Jonathan.
So you come here pretty often to the States?
No, we started. We came in 2019 to connect with the church here. Just a small group of guys, and then the plan was to come back every year, and then obviously COVID. So we're back now with them. And
fortunately, we met you. I mean, we were in front of the Versace mansion then.
Exactly.
And it was COVID that pushed us up here, which is a much better spot, by the way.
So I'm really trusting that our time together with them, Herb, is going to be beneficial in terms of really looking at growing the work here in the States. So, those guys that came here from SA, they came with nothing, so they've had to work to establish themselves. I mean, they're all doing well now, but they might just be the first generation to set that foundation for the future. And so they haven't been able to really commit themselves much to ministry. It's all been setting up business. So we say now, guys, well, what is the long-term objective for ministry here? We've got to be growing the work here in the States.
You've got a good solid idea and a good solid plan.
We have to, and for me it's like networking too. So I mean, I've met Herb, we stay in touch.
I like your idea about Gospel for USA or Gospel for America.
And growing the work together locally, so you support the guys there, they come and support here, we start growing the work together, and we start expanding the work as God opens doors going forward.
That's
because
good.
Otherwise the little groups of us that are not having necessarily any major impact, because we can do more together than we can independently, surely.
Well, check your schedule, and let's try to plan. If you're not doing something for a Thursday night, we're going to start the Book of Revelation series. Maybe Alan can come down or whatever, and if not, we'll put it on YouTube. But we can discuss a little more about that idea about sort of branching out.
But what are you doing tomorrow?
Tomorrow,
join us up there.
Yeah, what time?
I think they're meeting at 11. I'll confirm, and then
11
we'll
a.m.
a lunch afterwards, and just spend some time together.
Okay,
Come meet the guys.
Maybe I'll do that.
And
11
in
o'clock.
Fort Lauderdale?
They in Fort Lauderdale, yeah.
Good. So we'll plan for
And
that
I've got
for
a sister
tomorrow.
in Houston, so at the end of our trip we'll go fly across there and then fly home from there.
Great.
Yeah.
See Alan striking out for the gospel.